Fath is professor for pedagogy with special emphasis on historical aspects at the University of Munich. Please.
Okay. Thank you. Good morning. First of all, let me say that I'm very thankful for being invited here and having the opportunity to talk about the topic I care most in my research, and that is, as you can see, violence against children and, of course, how to prevent this violence against children in society. I just want to highlight two important things in my opinion. The first thing is what already Krebs mentioned yesterday, is the necessity and importance of more interdisciplinary research in the future. And the second aspect is I want to show that the sources of violence against children are very subtle and are hidden within the social structures of our society, especially in what we consider as normal. So first of all, let us take a short global perspective. What about the care for children in a global perspective? And I think that what a good source is to look at it, or to get a glimpse at it, is to look at the care for mothers, especially expectant mothers, all around the world. And there we have, for example, the institution of the Fund for Safe Motherhood of the United Nations. This is an institution especially with the purpose of decreasing maternal mortality, which means women dying from complications to pregnancy and giving birth. The budget of this fund for the years 2008 to 2010 were overall $38 million US. Just to give you one number for comparison, this is equal to 0.1% of the money spent in Europe for ice cream during the same time. And I think I'm not talking at all about the sums being invested in saving banks and companies during the so-called financial crisis. And if you speak of financial crisis and the presence on the media, you can ask yourself how present in everyday communication is the fact that every year about 350,000 to 500,000 women are dying from complications of pregnancy and giving birth. And just to give you a picture to imagine what that number means, this would be the same as if every 5 to 6 hours a jumbo jet full of pregnant women would crash. So this is a merely fact, and I think it's just I want to show from a global perspective. I think it's or it's still polite to say the care for children doesn't even appear on the priority list. So this is something, if you think about how much money perhaps could be spent in saving mothers, where we can say this is no topic at all. So in the center for me are two questions. The first is, what are the sources of violence against children? And there's something I will not exactly speak about history here today, but I will show from our present time the importance of historical research and interdisciplinary perspective in the future. And this leads to the second question, how can it be possible to prevent this violence? And I want to show this, the sources of violence, on two examples, two forms of it, that on the first side seem to have nothing in common at all. The first form is seldom considered as violence, and I think we often even consider it in European societies and especially in North American societies, even as care for children. And this is the diagnostic and the therapy of the so-called attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, in short ADHD. The diagnosis and the therapy of this so-called disorder is heavily criticized during the last years, and I think it's right to criticize it. And I can't show you the full discussion, but I just want to point out two things. One is dealing with the diagnostic criteria and is pointing out that they are characterized by a strong fuzziness, not clear at all. So I give you three examples, and these are the inability to sit still and focus on the topic, the inability to keep silent and wait until asked for talking, and the inability to be obedient to adult authorities. So now every one of us can ask himself if he was endangered to have ADHD in his past, and I think it could also be, at least these criteria, used as a good definition for the term child. I don't want to talk about really the diagnostic criteria anymore, but what I want to show to them is that the mere fact that we consider this behavioral pattern as a symptom of a disorder definitely shows that this behavior is undecided by society. We don't want children to act like that. And this will be important in the second form. Another act of criticism or point of criticism is that many of these children, for example in Germany it's over 35%, are treated with methylphenidate. The most popular name for it is Ritalin. This is a dopaminergic substance, and first what is important or criticized about it is from a toxicological point of view it's closely related to heroin, cocaine and LSD. So it's a very heavy drug, a severe drug, psychostimulant substance, and it comes with severe side effects. Among the official lists you find aggressive behavior, gastrointestinal problems, cardiovascular diseases, and unfortunately this is not a bad joke, an official side effect of the substance is the death of the child. So think about this for a moment, when we have to also point out that we have serious hints that a long-time use of this substance leads to the body ceasing its own production of dopamine. And from research we can also say that we have to be aware that a malfunction of the dopamine emission of the body has to be considered as a serious risk factor for Parkinson's syndrome. So this is something that is very rarely discussed about this topic, but we have to point out the long-time effects of this substance will emerge in 20 to 30 years. This is estimated. And from this point of view, I think we have the hint that there is a serious danger that it will cause severe diseases if a long-time use is done with this substance. And from this point of view, I can't say it in other words that it's a complete lack of responsibility that we have not one long-term study about the substance. We know nothing about it. We know we have to take the danger serious, but there's no research about what really happens when the substance is given for many years. So, now I come to the second source of the second form of violence. And if we think about it, it's not legitimated at all, it's prosecuted, it's even branded in society, and this is child molestation. We'll show you in the end why it is so important to discuss these two topics together. First of all, I have to say that in the last years we have a lot of research on the topic, and most of this research focused on the search for offender profiles. Now, up to now, we have about 8 to 10 different versions of offender profiles. And if we compare them, we find that indeed there is one commonality. Though there was a hope to find out one commonality. And this is nothing else but a sexual interest in children. So, think about this for a moment. The only thing the offender profiles are really telling us about the offenders is exactly the aspect they should explain. So I don't like it to say it, but we have to admit that, especially on this topic, the search for offender profiles seems to be a dead end. So it leads to no offers. On the other hand, we have a lot of research, and there we really can find commonalities, about, for example, the social structures and the social environments in which child molestation happens. And there we have a lot of risk factors we can point out, that characteristics of such environments, and I just want to highlight maybe the most important of it, and it is called social powerlessness of children. So whenever children can't articulate themselves, it's not important what they are thinking, how they are seeing the life, it becomes a very dangerous place. And if you think again now about the fact that within European, American societies, it is possible that children that show an undesired behavior over a long time are treated with a severe drug where we know nothing about long-term effects, then I think this would be a pretty good definition for the term social powerlessness of children. So this is one thing I think we have to face in the future for sure, is if that's the case, that this is a dangerous place, or this characterizes dangerous places for children to suffer from child molestation, we have to admit that our whole society is a dangerous place for children, because it is characterized by a powerlessness of children. Another aspect we can identify is that the offenders do not have psychic characteristics in common, but they always show an identical behavioral pattern, how they seduce and manipulate the children. And this is what is called in research emotional blackmail. So in almost any case, the offender has a very close emotional relation and bonding to the child. And this emotional bonding is used to force the child to do what the offender does. This starts with very simple sentences like, if you are really a good child, if you really love your parents, you will do this for me. And it ends with severe threats, for the child is told that if it starts talking about what happened to him, it will mean the destruction of his family, or the offender, which is, as I said, an emotional close person, will kill himself. And so the child is forced to blame himself for what happens to him. And this is, I think we can consider it in a different way as being very crucial. And now from this point, it's important, what I say, to think again about the desired behavioral patterns of children. And this is where we truly can identify a commonality of these two forms of violence, as legitimated the one is, and as branded the other one, is that they are both even thinkable at all without the exact same image of childhood, or respectively the idea of the perfect child. And if you think of what this diagnostic criteria show us, how we want our children to be, then we have this nice, obedient, quiet child that is very helpful to adult authorities, that exactly does what it's told by them. Then we have to admit this is almost the perfect victim for child molestation. And exactly the behavior that we don't want children to show. They are running around, they can't keep any secrets, they are talking anytime, they are talking about everything, they are not holding still. These children, we have to admit, are almost perfectly protected against the process of child molestation. So this is where I come to my conclusion, what I wanted to point out. How can we prevent it? I think what is really needed overall, and what is still lacking, is a huge general discussion in the whole society about what we really want to, or what is really for us the desirable behavior of our children. And what we at the moment consider as undesired behavioral patterns, we have to discuss if they are considered as pathological symptoms or are they safety factors. I think, and this is one of my theses, that of course it has some reason, and it is maybe also from an evolutionary point of perspective, that children are acting this weird, that they can't hold still, that it's normal for a child to talk about everything that happens to him. And of course this is a safety factor for children. If we take also, and this is why it's really so important to show these two aspects, what we consider as normal, as even medical care for children, and what is we can consider at the most severe suffering they have. So overall, I want to show that it is very important to this research in detail that we gain the ability of taking a holistic point of view, to see the full picture all around society. And this also means, because this one aspect is so crucial for this, for both forms of violence, that without taking this perspective, it's very likely that all other efforts, as good their intentions are, will show little to almost no effect on the problem, because children still be perfect victims. So here, what I started with and what I want to finish with is, first I want to point out the responsibility of society as a whole. We have to think in global perspective, in transnational perspectives, but as well considering our society within every nation as a whole, and where everyone shares a part of responsibility for what happens to the future generations. And especially for sciences and research, we also have to take, in my opinion, this holistic perspective and try to make it more possible interdisciplinary research, interdisciplinary projects that really try to gather all the different perspectives we have in details and try to create a larger picture, a full picture. And in my opinion, this is the last point, the most fruitful project would be an interdisciplinary research on the images of childhood throughout history and also across cultural boundaries, and try to see how they are linked to different forms of violence and degrees of violence against children. So that's all from me. Thank you very much for your attention.